Hi, everyone. I'm James Protin. I'd like to give a special thank you to our sponsors for the podcast. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Our guest today is Stephanie Samolovitch. She is the founder and executive director of Young Adult Survivors United, a health and wellness community for young adult cancer survivors. And by young adult, you're saying, and from what I read on your website in your bio, it's ages 18 to 39 when diagnosed.
Yep.
Okay, so
exactly it.
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming. And you're a busy young lady. We've been trying to do this for a while now, but I'm glad you're finally here.
Third time? Third time's a charm.
Third time's a charm.
Right?
Yeah,
That's
third time's a charm.
Yeah, so it's an honor to always share my story, raise awareness about young adults, because believe it or not, when people hear young adult, they're like the youth and the kids.
Yeah.
And I love the kids, and they need the support and they need the love, but it is so different from kids to young adults. From young adults to older adults is different.
So talk to me a little bit about that. What is, I get it, but to me, cancer is cancer. It's a horrific diagnosis, as we just said. It's something that nobody wants to hear. So what in particular about your experience, and you started this organization obviously because of what you went through. What specifically can you tell us about how the impacts are different for young adults?
A lot to share. I hope you're ready.
We're ready.
As I always say, and it is becoming redundant, but I tell everyone before I give presentations, imagine your life in your 20s and 30s. Imagine your kids in their 20s and 30s. And then imagining it all coming to a screeching halt. You have kids, right?
Sure.
Remember when they were infants and you get diagnosed with cancer and your whole life is flipped upside down.
Right.
Young adults are in a significant transition in their lives developmentally to become adults, to finally plan their weddings and land their first job and buy their first home and buy their first car. Start investing. We're scratching that surface a little bit later now with this generation, but still to the day, I see people when they are getting ready to finish college, right? I had a girl who was diagnosed with breast cancer after her first child was 4 weeks old.
Oh.
Can you imagine that couple? She was so excited to have her first child and start breastfeeding, and then she couldn't work anymore, and she's fighting for her life. We literally face our own mortality.
Exactly.
And then the roles change and the income is reduced, and it's traumatizing, full of anxiety and depression. You don't know who you are once treatment ends. So we have a lot to talk about, but I think I need to start by sharing my story because I would have never known any of this had I not been diagnosed myself as a young adult. So I'm a Pittsburgh girl.
Okay.
I grew up in West Mifflin, right by Allegheny County Airport.
Oh, okay, sure.
Went to West Mifflin High School. I loved hanging out at Century 3 Mall, which is, of course, no more. That was the hot spot.
Yeah, I remember.
And I was always an athletic person. I was healthy. I was popular in high school. I was on the homecoming court, and I just always loved being active. I played every sport except soccer, I think. And I went to college not having a clue what I wanted to be. But my parents didn't have an opportunity to go to college, so they basically said, like, you don't have a choice.
Yep,
and I was grateful for that. But I went to Cal U of PA. Easy to get in. I got in with flying colors, as I knew I would. I had friends that went there. We were your average partiers in college, but I always got good grades, and I was really good at math and science. So I decided to transfer to University of Pitt, Maine.
Okay.
2 weeks before my junior year of college there, I was diagnosed with ALL leukemia, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I had symptoms the summer of 2005, not having a clue that it would be cancer. I had water retention. I had random bruises. One was like on the palm of my hand. It was huge. It was bigger than like a dollar size, like a coin. And it just didn't go away. I had random bruises on my elbows and on my legs. And yeah, I'm a 19-year-old, but I wasn't that clumsy. Let's be honest.
Okay. Yeah, right. So you were an athlete.
Yeah, I was interning at a pharmacist here in Pittsburgh, and I was working a 10-hour shift one day, and I was so fatigued. I mean, it was god awful. I had some bleeding going on, and I talked to the pharmacist, and I said, I just don't feel right. Something's up. She's like, well, go home and rest.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to your PCP if you're really worried about it. You know, I don't know basically, I don't know what to tell you, but take care of yourself.
Sure.
And I remember driving home that night. I was talking to a friend and I said, I literally feel like I'm going to die. I am so tired and I don't feel well. I ended up having a fever of 103 degrees when I got home.
Wow.
Tired as ever. And I fought with my parents. I said, just let me sleep. I came home. I plotted myself on the couch. I said, just let me sleep it off. They did not listen. They called the PCP on call. He said, get her to the hospital after they told him my symptoms. So they rushed me to what was Southside Hospital at the time.
Okay.
Stayed overnight, did all the blood work. The next day, doctor comes in. He said to my dad, who was with me at the time, I think it could be leukemia. I'm not sure, but we need to have a bone marrow biopsy to confirm. I look at my dad. I don't know if you know what a bone marrow biopsy is like, but I looked at my dad and I said, what the heck is that?
It's unpleasant.
I said, what does that mean? And as soon as he told me, I just started crying my eyes out because I was terrified, of course. So they transferred me to another hospital where I would be better suited and treated. So we're talking Wednesday night I went to the hospital. Thursday, they think it might be leukemia. Friday, I get the bone marrow biopsy. Saturday, I'm by myself in the room because I'm 19 and a doctor walks in. My parents were getting ready to come see me. And this doctor walks in, doesn't even smile, stands over my bed like he's the dominant one and says, it's confirmed. You have ALL leukemia. We need you to sign consent forms for treatment. It starts on Monday. We don't have any time to wait. And all I heard was, you cannot go back to school. And side effects are X, Y, and Z. And by the way, one is infertility risk. And I was like, what? I think I blacked out, if I'm honest. And then he left the room.
That's understandable.
And then he left the room. And I was all by myself. And then this kind fellow walked in who we just became best of friends with, this doctor. He's from Cleveland, so we had a fun banter, I should say.
Yeah, sure.
We'd have competitions because I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. They started treating me immediately.
Okay.
My sister ended up calling my gynecologist that weekend to see if we could do any fertility preservation. She paged the gynecologist because it was on the weekend. So the gynecologist calls my sister back on Sunday, the day before my chemo starts, and says, you do not page me for something like this. This is not an emergency. Well, she was fired, and I also fired the oncologist that broke the news to me and then left the room, leaving me crying. So
you know,
it started off great.
I can't even, I can't even get my head around that. That's
So my parents came. I have an older brother and an older sister, both in Pittsburgh. They came. I had credit card debt. I was like, I start school in 2 weeks. Like, what am I supposed to do? How do we navigate this? I have no family history of cancer. This was completely new for us, let alone me being 19, which I turned 20 2 weeks later in the hospital still. There's a picture of me wearing a gown and a mask, and I'm holding my birthday cake. And I always joke around saying, I started the mask trend. Move over, pandemic. Because my immune system was just shot. So I always had to gown up when I was leaving my room. Anyways, I started just sharing my story. People would send cards every day. We had this huge Leukemia and Lymphoma Society banner because they do a walk every year.
Right.
And we were determined to do that walk 3 weeks after I was discharged from the hospital, which we did. But people would come into my hospital room, sign the banner. They'd send cards. We'd put all the cards up on my hospital room. And it was just becoming something that was a community effort. I'd have friends call. My parents, my mom would come in the afternoon. My dad would come in the evening. They would switch shifts. My sister would stay with me on the weekends. My brother would come in the evening. So it became a family effort. And I feel terrible for people who don't have a support system.
I was going to say, it's wonderful that you had that. That is, because that's so important. That is so important.
I would have never gotten through it without them. And I do see people, I mean, now I support young adults who are diagnosed during COVID. And they're getting bone marrow transplants by themselves because they couldn't have anyone come in the hospital. So I can't even imagine that. I empathize so much with them. Bottom line, I found something within me, some strength and some sign that I had something. Like I was determined. There was never a second in my mind. Yes, I saw my darkest days. I'm not going to lie.
Sure.
But I always thought that there's no way that I wasn't going to overcome this. And the more I shared my story with people, the more they would say back to me, you have a gift. You need to do something with this. So I ended up going back to school a year later. I was taking organic chemistry and calculus and physics. finishing my prerequisites for pharmacy school.
To go to pharmacy
and
school,
I was
right.
failing. I had chemo brain. My hair was like 1.5 inches long. I was so insecure to be a pit. I'm like this little new kid on campus that, I had no brain cells, I feel like. So look what I just went through for a year of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up switching my major to social work. I thought, I have to do something with this. And I was treated at the UPMC Hillman Cancer Center location. And they became my family. You're there every day sometimes. And the nurse in the hospital shaved my head because I was too late to call my beautician to come and cut it. So she shaved my head. Then she was transferred to the outpatient center. So like she and I, to this day, I'm 17 years out, we're best friends still.
Nice.
So
that's beautiful.
The staff there just became family to me. And I was by far the youngest on the floor, inpatient and outpatient. So I was almost seen as their child.
Right.
But they were just so kind and so loving and so supportive that I was begging all of them, can I please get my social work degree and work for you all? I was so determined
how blessed
to give back.
are we to have that? I mean, not just Hillman, but I mean, McGee, the whole UPMC system is just amazing. It's a blessing for our region.
We are so lucky here in Pittsburgh, let alone Western Pennsylvania. Right. I just gave a talk last week in Columbus at an oncology nursing society.
That's right. That's what postponed us to today.
Yeah, exactly. Thank God we did that. But it was to all nurses. And after I presented with 2 other young adult cancer survivors, they all came up to us and they said, we had no clue what you all need and how important our role is.
Sure.
So it just goes to show, anyways, I changed my major to social work.
Good for you.
And I started volunteering at Hillman, and I would serve lunches to the patients, and I got to share with them. I got to disclose what I just went through, and with a smiling face, though, like a beacon of hope, if you will, to them.
Sure.
So it just evolved into me wanting to really work in oncology. I knew I never wanted to be a therapist because it just wasn't my forte. I had all this energy and I could not picture myself like having that calmness sitting in the room with someone. Don't get me wrong. I love supporting people, but I knew that wasn't for me. So I found a local charity in Pittsburgh. It was called the Cancer Caring Center at the time.
Okay.
My field advisor at Pitt said, you should intern for them. And I said, absolutely not. Because I was a 3-year survivor at the time. I had never heard of them. I was going for Hillman or American Cancer Society or the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. They were huge. They were well known.
Sure.
They helped me along the way as far as financial assistance and some other things. I said, no, if I don't know about them, how can they be helpful?
Right.
What's valuable about them?
Right.
My family and I never heard about them. So I said, fine, I'll give it a try. And it was this little charity. They were established in 1988, Pittsburgh charity. And they gave me the will and the freedom to build something, a program.
Okay.
I loved it so much, and what they did, which was providing free emotional support services, so support groups and wellness programs like massages and Reiki and yoga, art therapy classes, you name it, they did it. And I loved that. So I ended up having a master's degree internship again there. And a month after I got my master's degree in social work, they hired me full-time as the director of support services. And I was so excited. A year later, I started running my first young adult cancer support group because I had the free reign. They said, what do you envision? The former director before me loved kids. So she did a ton of kids programs. Okay. That was not me. So I thought, what a great opportunity. Here we go. And I didn't know what it was going to become. But I was on a mission to meet other young adults and support them and build a community, if you will.
Okay.
So we'd have 3 people, we'd have none. Then we'd have 5, then we'd have 10. And over the course of 2 years, from 2012 to 2014, I was actively listening to their needs. This was a safe space. We met in a cafe in a private room. We'd always provide little snacks, and it was a safe space for them to open up because you don't understand. The people in here don't understand. Family doesn't understand. Their friends don't even understand. So half the time, because people don't know, they just bail out because they don't know what to say. So they feel isolated until they are sitting in a room with other people who can relate. On top of that, what I found was they can't just sit here and talk about cancer. We as young adults are trying to build our lives. We are trying to thrive to the next level as an adult, right? We're trying to build families. We're trying to establish who we are as an adult finally. So I thought, well, this is a good start, but what they need is financial assistance. I could have a whole show on that. And they needed a life. They needed some uplifting social activities,
Yeah,
right? They needed to
yeah,
get out of
right.
that house.
Right.
So I started planning monthly outings. I did all the fundraising on my own. We did kayaking on the rivers, cooking classes, paint nights, potluck Thanksgiving dinners. I even took them axe throwing once, and I was a little nervous, if I'm honest, Jim. But we had 25 people, I'll never forget, in Pittsburgh, and I think they saw the bullseye as cancer. Because the strength that they had to throw that axe, it was amazing. So we had
had to be such a release.
It was
what
awesome
a great
to
idea.
See. It was
tremendous
so rewarding.
idea.
Yeah, and like they don't have to talk about cancer.
Right.
They're talking about lives, and they're laughing, and they're sharing stories, and they're building friendships.
Because they went through that. It was all consuming, right? I mean, that has to consume your life.
It does.
You know, in that time frame.
Does.
So when you come away from that, that was a tremendous idea.
It was so fun, and then they just looked forward to that stuff, but they always came to the group because that's where they could share what's really going on challenging wise.
Right.
When you are diagnosed with cancer, I will say this, especially as a young adult, I mean, all cancer patients face their own mortality when you're diagnosed. The first thing that either you or your caregivers or anyone thinks when you're diagnosed, am I going to die?
Sure.
So as they see that, it is so traumatizing because they don't know who they can just immediately turn to and in those years until they find us. And it was so hard for me for years to get the message across of why this is significant, why this population is different. Even today, I'm still educating people, believe it or not. And I've been doing this for 10 years now, but finally we're scratching the surface.
I believe it.
So, you know, we see young adults as they've already had an upbringing in their childhood. They might have had rough childhoods, right?
Sure.
They may be coming with a lot of heavy mental health issues already. You just don't know until you get to greet them.
Right.
So I say all of that because I always say when a young adult is diagnosed, sometimes, and this was me, I don't even know if I would have gone to a support group, but what we've learned is it's so overwhelming in the beginning. You have to kind of get your feet wet of what this is going to be like. Some people just have surgery and then they're done. I had a guy who had testicular cancer. He had surgery, no chemo, no radiation. He was so traumatized because of how much it disrupted his life. Compared to another girl who was a single mom, diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer from the beginning, worked a full-time job because she had to support her son.
Right.
And she was fine. So you just never know how people are going to cope with it.
Everybody handles trauma differently.
And I always say this, when you are diagnosed and you're going through the motions, it's fight or flight. You have your blinders on, you need to get through it. Sometimes people want to know from others who've gone through it, what should I expect? Give me a heads up on something. Like, how am I going to feel?
Okay.
Now they have this bell in the treatment centers.
Yeah.
I don't like the bell.
Really?
I think if you are for it, that's fine. If you want my honest opinion, because this is the perfect opportunity where I'm going to be transparent. Think about the people who have metastatic disease who never get to ring that bell, who are sitting in that chair, hearing it, seeing it, and everyone comes. It is a moment. It's a celebratory moment. Don't get me wrong. You have just finished what you have fought for so hard.
Right.
You get to ring that bell. It is a proud moment. I didn't have that opportunity, but I can envision how proud of a moment and celebratory of a moment that is. It's cheerful, and the nurses come out and everyone's clapping. It's emotional.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are getting ready to leave that room, leave that hospital, and they're like, have a great life. Congratulations.
Go back to your life. Here you go.
And you sit there, and I always say the perfect thing that I think should happen is a little discharge, a little step down. Sit down and say, like, how do you really feel? Because you're reflecting, like, what just happened? It's traumatizing. And I say this, it's like the soldiers who go out the battlefield, they're not healing out there. They're fighting for their lives. It's when they come home, it's when it all piles up, all the emotions come to fruition, and they're starting to heal then. Who am I? What did I just go through? What's the rest of my life going to look like?
Right.
And in my presentation recently in Columbus, there was an article that I shared about there's too many published articles that don't touch upon young adults yet. They're out there, but at the end of the articles, oftentimes you'll see more research needs done. And because of the lack of research and the lack of understanding and the lack of knowledge for this population, they could potentially have lifelong side effects and lifelong consequences.
I would think.
So that's really why I have such a passion to help this population. So going back to when I was building the community, I was learning so much about them, and also I was growing such a passion for it. This was a program of a charity, and I was wearing so many other hats because I was facilitating all the programs, managing them and booking them and hiring facilitators and managing them. And I wore so many hats, and I love that part of my job, but I was growing such a passion for this population. And finally, when I felt we had the community, I hit like a glass ceiling, if you will. Like I couldn't do more than I wanted to. And I had all these visions for what could be done and all the needs that they still had. So I took the bull by the horns. I broke the news to my staff at the time then, which was kind of tough because as a charity, you want to help someone. You don't want to see them break off and go into another charity.
Right.
But it was the right thing to do, and I never looked back. And so I had all the preparation ready. I built the board. March 1st of 2020, I announced to the world on social media, to my group that I had already built, to the stakeholders that I had relationships with. I'm like, we're doing this. Well, you know what happened a couple weeks later? COVID was like, no, you're not. Yes. And I'm going to challenge you already. Here we go. Challenge number 1, pandemic. I would have never thought that a virtual program would be impactful. If it was 2019 or prior, I'd have said, no way.
Really?
We had in-person support groups, and someone would be crying, and someone just walk across the room and give them a hug. You know, it was just so beautiful to see. One time we had a girl who was diagnosed in Pittsburgh. She told me when she was out of the neck of the woods that she was going to go to LA to finish her career and start a new life. Okay. She was emotional, but she was so excited. So one night in our group, we FaceTimed with her, and we had a coffee table in the middle of the room, and we have a cell phone like facing up, and it's her face because she's trying to be a part of the group still.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, this is the best we can do, but like we can't really hear you, but like we tried everything. So anyways,
that's awesome.
When you're forced to have a virtual platform, what else are you going to do? But here's the thing. It was our silver lining, which I didn't realize in the beginning. I started running weekly groups. I was doing everything our first year because we had no money yet, you know, and it's a pandemic. Try raising money during a pandemic. Everybody struggled. So I talked to my board. They're like, well, how much should we raise this year? Like, what's sustainable? I said, how about 50,000? They're like, no, we could do better. I said, well, all right, let's shoot for 100,000. And I'm like, am I crazy? Like, what am I doing here? I have to be crazy. I'm losing my mind. Like, who's going to raise $100,000 during a pandemic, brand new charity? But here we go. So I was running groups every week, every Tuesday night, every Friday afternoon. I was running caregiver groups twice a month. I built a grief group because I had parents prior to this organization who I knew whose children passed away as young adults.
Right.
They needed a community. So I just started building and building and building and facilitating. And then I was fundraising, and then I built a website that I was managing, and then I was managing our social media. Like I was crazy, but I was not giving up. If I'm going to do this, I won't let this fail. So we raised $100,000 the first year.
Wow.
And we thought, okay, we're off to a good start.
That's impressive.
Okay, I can breathe. You know?
Yeah.
So we started contracting out and hiring out. And through that, other survivors from social media, particularly and word of mouth, got wind of what we were doing. And I would get emails or messages on social media. Can we join? From Wisconsin, from Florida, from Maine.
Wow.
From Utah, believe it or not. From Idaho, I had a girl, you know, and I was like, why not? Absolutely.
Sure.
They don't have anything else that they can turn to. Absolutely. So we've been operating for 2.5 years. I have members from over 32 states and now 3 other countries.
That is so awesome.
I had a mom in Montreal reach out in 2020. Her son was diagnosed with very rare cancer. He's now on his 5th battle.
Oh, my.
And it's not looking good, but they are like family to me now. And she's from Canada. So they're now at Cleveland Clinic for a second opinion. But just goes to show the amazing relationships you can build on a virtual platform.
And you literally can feel the passion that you have for this. Not even just listen to your words, but just your body language. And you can feel it. Like it's amazing. And when something gets in your heart like that, I mean, you can't shake it loose.
No,
I mean, you just can't.
No, I mean, this is my marriage. This is my life. And I tell everyone, and sometimes people are like, you got to slow down and you need to take breaks. Listen, I know self-care is so important, but
sure it is.
When you are diagnosed with something like cancer, like we said, and you face your own mortality and you overcome it, and then you have an opportunity to give back and build a legacy, if you will. That's the most rewarding part of my job. People would say like, oh, social work, you're not going to make any money. I said, that's not the reward here.
That's exactly right.
The reward is seeing them build bonds with each other.
Right.
Remove that isolation, right? Give them the opportunity to build a better quality of life. So within the past 2 years, we have weekly support groups that are virtual. We have offerings for the LGBTQ community, African American community. We do still have the grief support for parents. We have grief programs sometimes even for the survivors.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm glad that you have programs for the parents, because I have
They're lost.
5 kids. 4 of those 5 are in that age group, right? And at 18 to 39, and I actually have a granddaughter that's in that age group now. So when listening to you and thinking about what would I do if one of my kids or my granddaughter, were diagnosed right now at this point, obviously, you hope you would be there, right? But I also know, I lost my father to leukemia. He was 84 years old, and it was one of those things that he just wasn't physically strong enough to fight.
Yeah, that age,
right?
my gosh.
But
I was barely strong enough.
Well,
at 20.
To my point is that I think you mentioned self-care, which I think is critically important and to everyone. But I would think, do you find that easier now or more difficult? Because I would think that having gone through what you went through, you really have to know your body really, really well, right?
That's why not everyone can do what I'm doing.
Right. So when those people, I mean, I'm sure they have the best intentions, but self-care for you and taking care of yourself looks dramatically different to you than for me or even for Nick.
Yeah.
Right.
There are times when it is very emotionally heavy. We lost in 2021, between August and November, we lost 5 of our members. And I get so close to them because of my level of passion that they are like a sibling or family to me. Same with the other members. And I spoke at 3 funerals of the 5 that passed away. It was very hard. So for me, I need to go hiking. I need to go running. I need to just do something that's going to fulfill my soul, and I will take breaks and go traveling on my own just because I need to clear my head. It is emotionally very heavy at times, but it all comes out of the love that you have for that person and the inspiration that they give you. And the other thing that I like, and I remind my group members when they have, they oftentimes have survivor guilt, like why them and not me? Like why'd they die and I'm still here? Like it's not fair.
That's a real thing.
It is.
That's a real thing.
Oh, yes. And I say to them, but how beautiful that we got to know them.
Yeah.
The memories that we get to build with them. If you go on our website, there's one picture, I forget what page it's on, but there's archery behind the group when we did a camp retreat one weekend. And one of the guys is no longer here. There's maybe 2 actually. And the mom said, I appreciate that you still have that picture up. The video on our homepage, the first girl speaking, she was one of the ones we lost last year. No. I want to keep their memories alive because we have so many beautiful ones with them. And it just goes to show the strength of the bonds that they built. Even now, like, here's a story. Last August, we lost a girl named Raylene. She was one of my best friends. She had breast cancer for 10 months. She was the only child from her father. And she died. And that was one of the hardest things that I ever had to deal with in the past decade. I never had someone who was my friend, then a member.
Sure.
And through her passing, the family came to me and we had a discussion about how can we continue her legacy. So through that, we started this Ray of Hope program. We're providing free day-long or overnight respite trips for our members. I've sent people to spas, to concerts, to their favorite sporting events. I had a girl who's a 2-time breast cancer survivor. She and her husband went to Big Ben's last game. And then we put them in a fancy hotel downtown. And that made her a whole year. They get a budget of up to $1,000 to do these things. Can you imagine they don't have these opportunities otherwise because their funds are so limited.
Right.
So it's amazing for me to look back now and say all the impacts that we're making, but still say that we're scratching the surface, right?
Yeah.
And I love that I get to disclose at times when it's appropriate that I too am a young adult survivor because again, I would have never known why this is so different. So sometimes we provide educational series. We had a dentist come in before because I bet you didn't know that chemo affects your dental health. And no one knows this. No one's talking to the patients about that. They don't know that they should have an EKG 5 years after diagnosis because it can affect your heart. I had a girl with advanced lung cancer. You know, she fought tooth and nail to get that EKG. And it showed that she doesn't have great cardiac health.
Why would she have to fight for that?
Because there's not enough evidence-based research to show that that's needed.
You know,
and because they're so young, sometimes they're voiceless. They're not being heard. You know, they're told they're too young to be diagnosed with cancer. They're too young to have to go through all of this. You know, they're just not taken serious sometimes. I had a girl, here's another, I could tell you stories all day. We had one girl with thyroid cancer. When she went in for treatment, she always had a panic attack because she just hated the environment that she was in. She was terrified. So she went in one day and she was like, I forgot to take my Xanax or one of those medications. So she walked in, talked to the nurse. She said, I need to take this medicine or I'm going to have a panic attack. And the nurse was like, I'm not so sure. Maybe just let's start with Motrin and see how you do. Guess what happened? She had a panic attack.
Oh, my goodness.
So that's why they're all, not all, most of them are so passionate about advocating and speaking and getting able to use their voices. You know, that's why I want this community, because they have so much to share and educate with the world. I'm just one person, so I could talk on behalf of all of them, but
you're providing
so
a
many
platform,
inspiring stories.
Right?
Yes.
You're providing a platform. It's no different than what we're trying to do here for people like yourself that are doing these things, that have these passions, that are doing these things, but you're giving, you know, I think just about everybody has a voice, but not everybody knows how to use it. Right? So we think of, you know, well, they don't have a voice. Well, they do. They just can't find the platform, right? Or they just don't know how to put it out there. What you're doing is so amazing, because the ones that just won't or can't speak for themselves, you are very eloquent and you present yourself. It's amazing.
Thank you.
But you provide that platform and that safe space to encourage them and to inspire them. And the more they tell their stories, not only the better they're going to feel, because they're going to be helping the next person.
That's just it. Oh, I have another. Speaking to that, the guy that I told you from Montreal, he's in Cleveland Clinic right now because he has brain tumors now.
Oh my.
That were not there recently. And so he, with his cancer, it's so rare. He is saying he's on a mission to cure the incurable, because the doctors basically said to him, like, buddy, you're never going to beat this. He said, watch me. So, wow, the reality is what the reality is, which it pains me to even say that. Whenever they can biopsy one of his tumors, he's on a mission, because it costs like $5,000 to do that every time. So he's raising money to pay for each biopsy so that they can figure out what's going to treat it best, so that he can save the future patients who are diagnosed
the next
with
life.
this.
Sure.
Yeah. That's what these young adults are doing now.
That's the definition of courage, right? What else is there? Character, courage, all those things.
Yeah.
When you're faced with your own mortality, like you said, and let's face it, honestly, I don't know that there's anyone whose life hasn't been touched by cancer in some way.
Nowadays.
You know, whether or not you're a patient, you've been diagnosed, or someone that you love has. And, you know, it's so frustrating because we've made great strides in so many different areas, but it seems like we're just, you know, we push that giant boulder up the hill and then we slide back down. And for every step forward, we seem to take 2 steps back.
Exactly.
And when you hear stories about, like what you said, about how it's not embraced, but received in the medical community. And I get, you know, clinicians have to keep a certain distance, because they'll just, I mean, you couldn't handle that. Nobody can handle that emotionally, but it almost seems like there's somewhat of a defeatist attitude. Like, we can't beat this. We don't, there's no clinical evidence that we can beat this. So we're going to try to make these patients as comfortable and pain-free as we possibly can. But do you see that there's a lack of passion, of aggression toward the research to defeat these? I mean, it's just monstrous.
It's a complicated question, because it all comes down to funding. It all comes down to what they're studying. You know, there's a ton of research for breast cancer, as there should be. But like when it comes to rare cancers, you know, or just some that are just not as popular. I'm not saying they're rare, but they're just not as prevalent. You know, breast cancer is like the #1 of incidence rates for women, you know, and so understandably so. There's a lot of funding that goes into it, but if you don't have the funding, even clinical trials, there's just not enough out there.
Sure.
So I think there's passion. And now I'm seeing, let's face it, in 2005, there was nothing, no resources, no research. So now there's people are starting to dive into it. I almost get every other week emailed from other universities saying they're doing research studies. Can we help recruit for adolescents and young adults? So I get excited when I see that because I think people are finally realizing this population needs studied because
that's the progress, right?
90,000 are diagnosed a year now.
90,000 in that age group.
Young adults, 90,000, and it's going to grow. Let's be honest, So and it's becoming a chronic disease. So we're now seeing people who are diagnosed in their 30s. They're now in their 40s. Guess what? They're still lost. Because they can't relate to the young adults. They can't relate to a 20-year-old in a sport group. They're now 42.
Right.
They can't relate to a retired individual because they're not there yet.
Sure.
So by the end of the year, we're starting a program for those aging out of AYAs. So what I love about my job is I get to hear the need and see the gaps and be the connector
and you're
make it happen.
You're filling those gaps. I mean, that just you heard about this and boom, okay, we're going to take care of that.
We have to. How else is it going to get done? And I love collaborating. There's many other established organizations that, for example, there's one, it's called Grit Health. And we came and joined forces and we hosted a program asking these 40s, 50-year-olds, what do you want? What do you need? And they told us. So I say that because we are still this small and mighty charity. This other organization we're going to partner with is global. Okay. So they're going to help with marketing. Get the word out.
That's amazing. That's worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you ever heard the term survivorship care plans.
No.
But that's a new thing too. It's where it's basically your Bible. Like you track the whole history, all your medications, all that you've gone through, all the surgeries, how many radiation treatments
that
you've
has
had.
to be overwhelming.
I can't tell you everything that I went through. I can't tell you all the drugs that I had. I can tell you some, but I'm like, when did I have that? And for how long? In other states and other cancer centers, that is part of the protocol before you exit and ring that bell. It's not being discussed. There's too understaffed, lack of knowledge, lack of resources. So we had a program last night. I partnered with 3 other charities to educate our young adults on why this is important, how you can advocate for yourself. That would eliminate someone having to fight for an EKG, right?
Right.
So it just gives them a heads up of like what's to come. If you're metastatic, this is going to be your life. But like these are the things you should think about long term. So they have a heads up. So they're not blindsided. Someone said, I wish they would have just given me a heads up on like what this medication was going to do for me 5 years down the road. Right. So I always say this because there's just so much more work to be done. But I am ever so grateful to be given this opportunity. My vision is, headquarters will be here in Pittsburgh. Hopefully in 5-10 years, we start having chapters in other cities.
Well, you're not that far from that. I mean, you're doing things.
I just need the funds. Which
so,
we're getting there.
So, well, how can the average person who may just hear your story and say, you know what, I have no direct experience or relationship with cancer, but I really want to help. How can I help?
Honestly, one of the most tangible donations that we get, well, first of all, anyone can donate. We have a monthly donor club. They get a nice T-shirt like you got today. You have to motto it off.
That's awesome. I should have put it on.
And I honestly, I say this as a joke, but I mean it. $10 a month is minimum. I went to Starbucks last week. It was $7 for my latte. So I'm like, $10 is nothing. But you add that up. Let's say everyone in this coffee shop did $10 a month. That's huge for these patients. And here's why. We have a financial assistance program. You can apply annually. Right now, it's only $500. And I say only because it is a helping hand. Don't get me wrong. They can get help with medical bills, rent, mortgage,
but $500
utilities.
over the course of a year, is so manageable that, I mean, and people don't, people will hear $500, but when you think about how you can spread it out, I'm not handing you $500, but I am. Right?
I mean, we're paying directly the vendors. I paid school loans. I paid car repairs. Someone needed 4 tires and they couldn't get to and from treatment. So we're like,
that's amazing.
We'll help. Last year, we gave almost $30,000 out in funding for financial assistance, and 51% needed basic needs, meaning Walmart, Target, grocery gift cards, gas gift cards. Let's talk about fuel,
Right.
and the cost.
Right.
Some people are
Exactly.
driving to treatment every day of the week. So 51% last year went to gift cards for them. So a lot of times people now donate grocery, gas, Walmart, Target gift cards.
It's so amazing that you're growing here.
Yeah.
You have people from 32 different states and three countries, but yet you're still offering grassroots, feet on the ground services.
Yeah.
That is so impressive. What about corporate support?
We do get corporate support.
My day job, worked for a company, Greenman Peterson Incorporated, tremendous company. We're very socially involved, very, very motivated. How would GPI support your organization at the corporate level?
Just doing, campaigns to collect gift cards, or on another level. I mean, we have volunteer opportunities throughout the year. We have 3 major events. So I have a golf outing in July. If anyone is a golfer, we would always welcome them to come. There's always
Bad golfers,
sponsorship.
is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's the one thing people always say. Well, I'm not good at golfing. I'm like, so what? It's for charity.
That's
We have a
exactly
great
right.
time. We had 2 food trucks this year. They were amazing. I drove around the beverage cart all day, so I
Cool.
get to talk with all the golfers. It's
That's awesome.
so fun. So sponsorship opportunities are always an option.
See, and I love that because using my company as an example,
Yeah.
we have 1,700 and change employees. Okay,
Yep.
so if all 1,700 of our people would donate a $10 gift card, right?
Can you imagine?
$10 each.
Yes.
That's all it would
Yeah.
take. So you think about the size of your company, anybody, and we're very well received in the business community, I think. And I think I would encourage everybody to really, it's that simple. It is that simple. You're not putting a strain on your staff, on your team, right?
No.
$10
That's it.
times 1,700. I mean, the impact
Not a mathematician, but I can figure that one out.
the impact that our firm could make,
Yeah.
just with $10 each, it's
And then we
it's
show
amazing.
it as a partnership of ours. We work very closely with some of the pharmaceutical companies, of course. But for example, my mom, believe it or not, she gets her car at Dean Honda, the Honda dealership, and she went there with my letter and my brochures. She's a proud mom. Everyone she talks to is first saying, my
Love
daughter's
that.
a young adult survivor. I'm like, stop it, Mom. So she went to the dealership because I have another event coming up at the end of October, which I'll tell you about. But she's trying to get donations for our auction. They ended up becoming a sponsor after hearing what we do and why we do it.
Wow,
It's
nice.
just getting the word out and telling stories and hearing from our group members that
Sure.
it's easy to get corporate support. Sometimes they'll donate baskets for our auction, our bigger items, ticket items, concert items. I just got Steeler tickets from another corporate company for our auction for our event coming up. So many, many ways. We love partnering. I love collaborating. Depending on, there's a restaurant in Pittsburgh, they'll do a brunch. They call it a brunch raiser. So for the month of May, they'll have brunch every Sunday and donate a portion of the proceeds to us. So you can get so creative with it. And that's where I love coming in to talk about it and brainstorm. So we have the golf outing in July. This year, we ran our first ever 4-day young adult cancer camp retreat at a YMCA venue called Camp Conaquee Spencer. It's just north of Pittsburgh. We had 77 campers, meaning young adult survivors.
Wow.
25 flew in from other states, 1 from Canada, and we got to see them meet in person. We got to see them relax. It was respite. It was relaxing, but it was also engaging. We had activities like archery, canoeing, climbing walls, 15-foot wide slip and slide, believe it or not. And that was the most popular thing that they did.
That is amazing. That's... some of the things that you're saying, I'm trying to converse, but I'm speechless on some of it because I am so impressed
Thank you.
with where your journey the last 17 years, and that in itself, that you're 17 years out from that. But I love you. I mean, that is,
Thank you.
And you're so passionate, but you haven't. I mean, you could have just went and got on with your life, right? I mean, I think
I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, and humans are basically selfish.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think the easy
And
path
stubborn.
for you, the easy
That
path
was
would
very
have been, I survived that. I'm going to put back there, and I'm going to enjoy myself. All right, But rather than do that, you took your heart and you put it into everybody that was coming after you, right? All the patients, everybody who's diagnosed that was coming behind you, you're taking care of all of them. You took it upon yourself to take care of everybody.
I don't think people understand. Like they think that I'm putting on like a face. I'm like, no, I really love them. I do. There's
it's obvious sitting here with you,
it's
you know,
community.
and maybe just, you know, reading that on a website or seeing this or seeing that, but sitting down with you and listening to you. And again, you know, conversation is more visual than audio, right? So just watching you as you're telling your story. I mean, you're about as genuine as they come.
You.
I mean, this is real for you. It's real. It's real life.
I literally bawled my eyes out leaving camp. I was the last to lock the door. We had 2 lodges. They got breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they all I heard all weekend was, we love that we had an agenda, but we were like, if you want to take a nap, if you want to lay in the hammock, some of them laid in the grass at night and stargazed. Do it. This is for you. We're not going to make you come to a class or a workshop or an activity. No, and they love that. There was a couple, and the wife was wheelchair bound, I should say. And they said all weekend, our lives have been so chaotic and so structured and so overwhelming for the past 2 years. This is exactly what we needed. And that girl and her husband, they had like a inflatable boat, like that you put in a pool.
Yeah.
To let those who were not able-bodied go down the slip and slide. And when I want to share the video with you because it's at the end. And when they go down that slip and slide, look, I'm already tearing up to see the joy on their faces.
That is so
look at me.
Powerful.
I can't even say it.
No, but
like we're removing the disabilities, right?
Exactly.
For 1 weekend.
Exactly.
We had a blind guy go up the climbing wall because they help you. It's just, it's incredible. So I could go on for days talking about these experiences.
What you're doing. And this is like, you know, when we met, we were introduced at a book launch here not too long ago.
Yeah.
We had never met before that. And we really haven't talked other than exchanging a few emails, you know, but I felt you. I felt your story when you shook my hand and you came over and you shook my hand and you smiled and you said, you know, wow. I mean, this story is that powerful.
Thank you.
Right? That I told Nick, and I actually, full disclosure, because I have to mention his mother on every podcast because I work with his mother in my day job. Right? So, and she's I don't know if she's frustrated or amused that she gets mentioned on just about every podcast, but that's neither here nor there. Because, you know, people wonder, how do you do this? What do I do? You know, I've been doing it for 40 years and I do it with his mother. So anyway, but I got that from you, right? In that first meeting, I got that from you, and I could not wait to sit down with you and listen to this. And I got to tell you, it's more powerful than I even thought it would be.
Thank you.
You know,
I was surprised when you said it. I'm like, he barely knows me, but absolutely, I'll speak. I mean, you saw the brochure and my business card, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and I knew just, you know, you would be, you know, eloquent and speak well and all those different things, but I didn't see the passion, right? And that's what I wanted to see. That's what I was interested in because, you know, again, going through trauma like that, you know, and every human handles trauma differently. You know, we all like to think, well, we're good. We'll be able to do it until it happens, right? And like when I talk about divorce, you know, which was the defining trauma in my life when I was basically your age, right? So but people say, everybody gets divorced now. I mean, more marriages end in divorce than stay together, right? So that's nothing. Wait, man up. Be a man. Come on, straight. No,
at that time.
But exactly. And, you know, when we talk about health and wellness, and I really want to see what that means to you in that term, health and wellness, because when I talk to people about that, the first place they go is fitness or nutrition, right? Very rarely will anybody talk about the mental health aspect of wellness, right?
Nobody does.
And when you think about mental health and knowing from dealing with depression for a very long time, how a chronic illness can impact your overall mental health, let alone a catastrophic illness, right? Because even as a survivor, that was a catastrophic experience in your life. I mean, that changed everything that you were, right? So talk to me a little bit about wellness and how it relates to, and your personal experience, but how it relates to having that type of an experience physically, the physicality of that and the mental part of it.
It's hard. It's not an easy answer. It takes time. It takes patience.
We have all day. We got nothing else to do.
It takes education, So let's break it up into health, then wellness. Health to me is, yes, physical, emotional, mental, all of that.
Right.
Which you don't know until you have to think about all of those aspects, which to me is so frustrating because we're just seeing integrative services in the cancer centers. Right. You didn't see that when I was going through it.
Right.
It was medical or nothing, And
how much did you think about your overall health at 19 before you were diagnosed?
Right? As healthy as could be. I didn't even blink. Yeah, I got my annual physical and that was it.
Yeah.
But then when you have neuropathy in your hands and feet, they're numb and then they burn and they're tingling. I could barely walk at times. So for health, it is equally important as it is in my opinion, wellness. When I started publicly speaking, I said the perfect recipe is, yes, medicine, we need it. I will not sit here and say, just go naturopathic, holistic. That's me. There are people out there that do it and they're surviving. Kudos to them.
Right.
But I think we need medicine. There was a guy, we do need fitness. We need exercise. There are a lot of research studies out there showing that your symptoms will be reduced if you do some kind of exercise. We're not talking about a Tough Mudder. We're talking about going for a walk.
Right.
But that's hard when you're in the moment, and I gained 35 pounds within the first 3 weeks of being diagnosed because of the steroids and what it was all doing to my body.
Okay, sure. 2
months later, I lost over 60 pounds. Because the chemo your appetite changes. Yeah. I mean, you lose muscle.
That's a swing. I mean, that's, wow.
So if we're talking about cancer related, when you need physical therapy, you need occupational therapy, you need all of that to build your strength back up. But I also think, I just told someone this yesterday. We had a program last night on survivorship care plans. And this woman said, I just got a therapist. And I said, great. Because I think group support, meeting other people who can relate, can help your mental health and your emotional health. But also having that individual support where you have someone in third party where you could just let it all out and someone's going to listen and support you. Maybe others in that group won't understand. We have a girl in our group now. Her father pretty much raped her when she was younger. And she has a lot of domestic violence from her past. She doesn't really go into that in our group. She goes into that with her therapist.
Right.
Because she just got over having melanoma.
Oh my goodness.
So these are the examples that I bring because each person is so unique, but I love getting able to talk with them and navigating what's going to meet your health and wellness needs. When we talk about wellness, how are you calming your mind? How are you sleeping at night? Those types of things. It all comes back to how are these related to your quality of life? So if you think about like a pyramid or a tree, like the quality of life is up top. Underneath of it is how we're going to build it to get to that top of the pyramid.
And sustain it.
And it's health and wellness is that. So for some people, wellness is the yoga and the meditation and the retreats and the plant-based diets. Other people, it's running a marathon or reading a book, or listening to podcasts. Audiobooks, things like that. So the beauty of it in today's world is there are so many options. I just hope that people do trial and error, right? I'm not one to read a book. I don't have time to read a book.
See what works for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. For me, I'd rather go on a walk in the woods than read book. That's me. That calms my mind. Especially when we lose people in our group, I have to go on my own and cry it out.
Sure.
And that helps. That helps my wellness. So I don't think there's one answer for when it comes to health and wellness, but I do think each person has to find what's going to benefit them the best. And that's where the beauty of it comes in when you have a community like I do. Everyone has different perspectives, but I say not one's better than the other. They're all just different. So take what you think will be beneficial.
It's almost like a la carte menu, right? You take,
it's like
you
a buffet.
take what you need. You take what you need, what works for you.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with, like, you walked in here, you don't look like you've ever been sick a day in your life. I mean, you look as healthy as
you never know.
Right. You know, I mean, you just can't ever tell what somebody's been through, what's going on in their life, right? I mean, do you get that?
I do, but they do more. I mean, obviously people don't know that I ever had it until I tell it.
Yeah.
But even the people who, I'm trying to think of someone, not everyone loses their hair, for example, you know, or they have a colostomy bag because they had colon cancer.
Yeah.
So they lost their colon. You don't know that right away.
Yeah.
And people will often say, you look great. And on the inside, they're so broken.
Yeah.
That's tough. I can't tell you how many times we get asked, what should people not say? I say, don't judge a book by its cover. Every presentation I give is that. Yeah. How are you really feeling? Talk to me. Outside and inside.
You can look healthy and be very, very sick.
And we have them.
And it's not even just cancer related.
Yeah.
You know, we've done some shows on depression and you know, something that's touched me very closely is a heart disease, cardiomyopathy.
Yeah.
Right? And my stepdaughter looks like you, right? She's about the same age as you. And nobody believes she's sick, but her heart works at about 40% of capacity. She's very sick. Right. And it impacts her in a lot of different ways. And so, you know, that judging a book by its cover it can be troublesome.
Yeah.
When you're in recovery and you're trying to heal.
Yeah.
You know, because you're still all busted up in here, you know, and looking good is not feeling good.
That's just it. You know, I have a girl who's over 10 years out from treatment. She looks just like I do, but with brown hair. And she has a significant eating disorder now. So we could give all these examples, but the bottom line is, no, don't judge. Don't be so closed-minded. Just because they rang the bell, they're not celebrating life, I assure you.
Just be kind to people.
Yeah.
You know, that's the key. Just be kind to people. You know, it's not that hard.
No.
It's not that hard.
I got this tattoo. It's an infinity circle for my birthday because I saw one that said, live the life you love and love the life you live. And it was just like this, ongoing.
Yeah, there you go.
So every time I look at my wrist now, I'm determined.
Very cool.
But it took all of this to think that and to live by that. And not everyone has that opportunity. So if I can give any support, any hope, any guidance to one person, I said this for 17 years now, then it's worth it.
Sure. And like you said, everybody's different. So you can't just pull it off a shelf and throw it out there because you have to, you in your position and even going out and talking, we talked about your speaking engagement out in Columbus, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you walk into a facility, a room, whatever, with a couple hundred people and you have a couple hundred different perspectives on what you're about to say.
Yep.
You know, so it's not a one size fits all situation.
And that's the challenge in the adult cancer centers because it's standard of care.
Yeah.
And it can't be that anymore with these young adults. So I'm trying to break into them. I'm trying to be the outsider and the bug in their ear. But the last thing I'll say, you know, we do celebrate. We do laugh. It's not all sadness. We have some incredible memories. I will share that on October 28th, we're having my favorite event of the year, if I'm honest. It's called a wig out. Everybody wears Halloween wigs. Last year we had 450 people at the ballroom at the casino.
Really?
Everybody wears a Halloween wig, including the survivors. We put them up on stage. We dedicate the night to them. We have a best wig contest, huge auction, food, drink vendors, you name it. We partner with the local radio station, 100.7. We put the survivors on stage, and we give them the night. So
Nick,
we have fun.
We're going.
I have wigs.
28th, we're going.
I will supply the wigs.
Do you honestly think Nick doesn't have wigs? Come on,
I don't
seriously.
know.
Look at him. Lauren, does he have a wig?
Probably somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so fun.
What I would like to do is commit to you right now that GPI will sponsor. We'll be a
Thank
sponsor.
you.
We'll do that.
I appreciate it so much.
And we definitely will go. We'll be there to support it, but I would love to do a sponsorship for
and
that.
I would love to have you as guests. So if you know anyone else, please, yes.
My team, I'm blessed with a small core leadership group with this firm, and you will love. Well, you met two of them at the book launch, but you'll love them, and they're going to love you. And this is something that is right in our sweet spot. So we definitely will be there, and we'll support it.
Thank you so much, Jim. I mean, it's high energy, but it does get emotional. I will have a speaker. She's an ovarian cancer survivor, 5th time.
And if there are, we're storytellers. That's what Nick and I try to do here, right? We exactly. So if there's somebody who wants to tell their story, who wants to come and talk with us and share their story, anybody from your organization, we've had a lot of guests come from recommendations from previous guests.
Yeah.
Hey, I know somebody, so that's who we are, and I know that's who you are. So
I appreciate it.
Please,
share. Watch what you say. I have a lot of them that would be compelling.
So just in closing, wrapping up, first, give us your website. Tell us, how do we find your website and get more information?
We are currently in the beginning stages of building a new website, if I'm honest. So if people go to our website, it's going to look different in about 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
But it's www.yasurvivors, plural, YASURVIVORS. So yasurvivors.org.
Okay.
That's it, www.yasurvivors.org. We're very prevalent on Instagram as well as Facebook. We have a Twitter account. We're horrible at it. Keeping up with it, I'm just not a Twitter fan, if I'm honest. So
yeah, Twitter's not my thing.
I think that's why a lot of people are finding out about us through word of mouth because they're seeing it on Instagram. We spotlight survivors and we highlight programs and upcoming events, and there's so much content on there. It's incredible to see, and it kind of just instantly brings you into the community and who we are and what we do and why.
When you do things, please tag us and share it. On not only our podcast Facebook page, but also my personal page. Tag us, and we'll get the word out there. And the WIG event is October 28th at Rivers Casino.
The WIG out is Friday, October 28th from 6. Here's the thing: last year was on a Thursday. This year it's on a Friday. So people are so excited because it's a party.
Yeah.
It's normally 6 to 9 p.m. This year it's 6 to 10 p.m. for an extra hour of DJ and music and partying.
Okay.
So it's Friday, October 28th at the Rivers Casino upstairs in the ballroom. It's a 10,000 square foot space. So there's plenty of room to move around. Tickets are only $50 for one and $90 for two. So it's kind of a cheap event for all that you get.
Yeah.
You'll leave with a full belly, I assure you. And what else? The website for anyone interested. Just type in www.givesmart.com. Don't put the www, it won't work. So just wigout.givesmart.com. But everything's on our website.
Okay.
And I'm everywhere. So if anyone needs to reach me, my email is Stephanie, STEPHANIE, @yasurvivors.org.
Wonderful.
You'll find me anywhere.
Thank you
Google
so
us.
much.
It's been a pleasure.
Oh, absolutely. It's been our pleasure. Thank you so much for coming and joining us
honored.
and telling your story. We're honored. We're honored. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to doing some really cool things with you moving forward.
Yeah, likewise. I appreciate it.